Like Trump, Reagan, both great debaters, but Reagan's experience, was it anything like Trump as far as you see this deep-seated animosity, even hatred and division in this country?
Charles, the answer is yes and no. There was a lot of hate aimed at Ronald Reagan before, during, and after his presidency. Terrible things were written, like, for instance, by the Washington Post about things. Even the week of his funeral, they devoted the entire style section to ripping apart him and his career. Individuals, everybody from Ted Rall to Bette Midler to everybody in between. But, as far as the hatred, you can't go any further than the assassination itself. When John Hinckley tried to kill Ronald Reagan, killed Jim Brady and wounded two other Secret Service agent and police officer. And John Hinckley's legal counsel was filled with a bunch of liberals, including Greg Craig, who later was Ted Kennedy's chief counsel and then later Barack Obama's chief counsel. And John Hinckley is walking around free today, even though he murdered, according to the coroner, murdered Jim Brady. So the left has always been organized hatred of Ronald Reagan. I think the difference is the velocity of communications is more intense today. You didn't have social media in the 80s. You didn't have the internet. You didn't have much of a cable television presence. So we notice these things more now than we did. But the hatred and the venom aimed at Ronald Reagan was very, very intense.
But Craig, I look at things, for instance, every poll, I go into them, I go in them deep, and
Sure.
Or surveys, right? And, you'll get the headline number, but then when they break it down by party affiliation, it is mind-boggling. There was a one out by Gallup recently, I think, on satisfaction with the country, and something like an 87% gap between the Democrats and Republicans. Just numbers that you can't even fathom that we could be that far apart on things like how the economy is doing. Because the irony is, when you measure it by other things like age or
That's right.
we don't see that. But when you ask specifically along party lines, you see that division.
Yeah, I agree with you. But the reason is that neither party is static. Both parties are dynamic. The Republican Party of today, of 2020, is not the Republican Party of 1980. The very term Reagan Democrat isn't even used much anymore because most of those Reagan Democrats have become Republicans. The Republican Party is virtually all a conservative populist party. The Democratic Party is virtually all a liberal pro-government party. There's no overlap anymore, and that really explains the difference in the polling of, say, Republicans and Independents and Democrats in the 1980s versus polling of Republicans today.
But Craig, what do you make of this notion, that the animosity toward Trump is so deep and so animated, to your point, that there's an anyone but Trump thing going on over on the Democratic side, that they're saying out loud they're willing to accept candidates who have done things to their constituents that they would scream bloody murder if it was anyone else, that they're willing to accept those things in order to beat Trump. Anyone but Trump, and that he is just that bad for the country in the eyes of progressives and liberals.
Yeah, there's a historical precedent here, Charles. In 1972, the left hated Richard Nixon, and the left took over the Democratic Party, and they nominated George McGovern, the worst candidate they could have nominated, instead of somebody more mainstream like Hubert Humphrey. In 1984, the left hated Ronald Reagan, so instead of nominating John Glenn, who may have stood a chance against Reagan, they went far left and they nominated Walter Mondale. Both McGovern and Mondale lost in historic landslides. The left has again taken over the Democratic Party, which ensures they're going to nominate the most left-wing candidate, which almost guarantees Trump's reelection. I'm not saying it is a guarantee,
sure,
but the party has become kind of the one-trick pony, which is just the party of impeachment, whereas Donald Trump has got the economy, and the American people may not like Donald Trump, but they love their 401ks, and so this is going to all help his reelection this year.
Great stuff. Really.